Hey there, thanks for tuning into Duckbricks. I'm Chris, and today we are kicking off a video series where I will dive in to every single LEGO Lord of the Rings and Hobbit minifigure ever made from 2012 all the way to 2026, celebrating the release of the massive Minas Tirith set. Since there are so many different characters across this lineup, nearly 200 minifigures, I'm going to break up these videos by race. Of course, we have to start off with the hobbits, then we'll move on to the men and wizards, then the elves, the dwarves, and then finally the orcs, goblins, and other unsavory characters. But somehow I feel like this isn't the right setting to make a video like this. That's better. We have made our way to the Shire. I am in New Zealand, where I figured this was the perfect place to showcase all the Lord of the Rings minifigures on location in Hobbiton. I think, of course, we have to start off with the Hobbits. Here's a quick overview of all of our Hobbit and Hobbit-adjacent characters from LEGO Lord of the Rings. One thing you'll start to notice is that many of these are basically just different variations of the same characters, which makes a lot of sense, given how they're important in the movies, but really only a few named characters are important when it comes to the Hobbits, as opposed to a lot of the other armies and characters we'll look at from different races, which feature a lot of army builder characters and more generic minifigures. So this is a really interesting lineup because they've covered almost all of the main important outfits for the characters that we see throughout the films. Of course, I'm gonna have to start off with Frodo Baggins here, and he has so many different outfits to himself, so let's jump into him right now. Of course, we have to start off with our minifigure from one of the very first scenes we see in the Lord of the Rings movies, and that is Frodo in his casual sand green outfit. This minifigure appeared in 2012 for the Gandalf Arrive set, but also came in a small poly bag, allowing you to have a number of ways to get him, and it is Frodo at his happiest before he had the burden of the ring. As you can see, he is not holding it in his hand right now, and it's really cool how they managed to depict that as a small little LEGO set. Now, you can see the design they were going for with the hobbits. Since this is the first one we are looking at, I want to emphasize a few key details here. Obviously, they were using these short legs. This was before they actually had dual molding introduced for the legs, or dual molding introduced really in general for LEGO, because this was 2012, so he just has his plain legs with no semblance of the feet being showing. However, they actually made a brand new hairpiece that they use for pretty much every single Hobbit minifigure. In fact, it's very rare to find a Hobbit that does not use this hairpiece, but they made it as a specialized new mold in 2012. Even the modern versions of Frodo use it to this day, and I think it's a pretty perfect hairpiece to use. It just fits the characters really well. I think the facial prints here are really interesting because these minifigures in 2012 had a very stylized graphic design, and it's going to be a lot more apparent when we look at some of the other races, like if you look at some of the elf minifigures who are like yelling really angrily or have very aggressive printed cheek lines, but you can even see a little bit of it in the Hobbit minifigures of 2012, where they have a graphic design style that is a little bit different compared to your modern LEGO minifigure, and that's something that the modern versions of Frodo have improved and cleaned up, but it's interesting seeing how things have changed over the years. And this is a really nice starter minifigure to get. It's not the most exciting figure or not the craziest design, but it's a really nice one because it showcases the beginning of his journey. And speaking of the beginning of his journey in chronological movie order, this is our next casual Frodo outfit. Flashing forward all the way to 2025, last year we got the Shire as a set, and that one came with Frodo wearing a specially nice outfit for Bilbo's birthday party. Now this one does have dual molded legs, showcasing how LEGO does try to improve their minifigures over time, and it's really interesting because they wanted to showcase them not wearing any shoes, so obviously you have the tan molded on the bottom there, which is quite funny to see. He does have a special new facial expression for the minifigure exclusive to this character because they wanted to show him very happy in this scene. So I like the printing of the gap in between the teeth. I feel like that's a nice touch. He does have a more standard smile on the back there, and this minifigure overall is really nicely produced with metallic copper designs for the print of the minifigure. It's probably never going to really appear in any other set. It's a very scene-specific outfit, but I like how they went the extra effort of making an exclusive minifigure minifigure just for that. As Frodo sets off on his journey, he receives a new outfit, and this is the one predominantly used throughout the 2012 and some 2013 Lord of the Rings sets, featuring a dark green cloak. He does have the One Ring as the accessory and Sting as the sword, a specialized mold they made for the Lord of the Rings and Hobbit sets back in the day, and then they made a newer version of it for the Rivendell set. This is a really interesting minifigure because they made a specialized face print for Frodo. Again, you can see how they really wanted to exaggerate some of the facial features there, so I wanted to showcase him with the scared expression here because obviously he has the very bright blue eyes, showcasing maybe him being stabbed by the Morgul blade, or maybe him being in the shadow world where he has put on the ring and now he's invisible. And then of course you have a more standardized alternate expression on the back, showing some of the wrinkles around his eye bags, like it's already setting in with the stress of the ring. Technically, there is a separate variant of this minifigure included in the Rivendell set that we got, not the new one, but the old one, all the way back in 2013. This is identical to the one that we just looked at, except he doesn't have the cape on because he took it off when he was in bed recovering and they wanted to depict that. So here he just has the regular print on the torso. You can see what the print looks like on the back, and I like how they wanted to differentiate the characters in between different scenes. It really goes to show that they put a lot of extra care and attention into the Lord of the Rings series. We did, however, get a new version of this character for the Rivendell set in Lord of the Rings' big relaunch in 2013, and while a lot of the details of the figure are the same, he does feature a slightly updated torso print and those dual molded legs, plus bringing back that dark green short cape and the hairpiece, which they used pretty much unchanged from 2012. The interesting thing about this figure is, again, they did a brand new mold for the sword Sting here, which is part of the Lord of the Rings weapon pack, and then going ahead and removing the cape so you can see the detail underneath. The printing is just ever so slightly different and updated compared to the original. It still is very similar, and I do like how similar it is because obviously it is meant to depict that one outfit, but you can see the extra little layer of effort they put into making it match the more standardized graphic design. And even the facial expression he has on the back there is a bit more toned down than the very extreme, gasping, scared expression he had on the older minifigure, which is emblematic of the minifigure graphic design they had going on at the time. The alternate expression he has on the back here is a little bit more subtle and muted, still showing the milky blue eyes, which makes sense for the character, but I think it fits a lot more into LEGO's standard graphic design on this style as opposed to the other minifigure, which is very nice to see. And I like how on one side he does have a smile there instead of just that worried face. In some of the later films, Frodo received a different color of cloak, this time in gray, and that is what this minifigure depicts right here, also from the 2012 and 2013 lineup. This one is identical to the other one that we saw, except he does have a dark gray color of cloak, which makes sense to match those specific scenes. Otherwise, we've already taken a look at this minifigure on the list, so let's move on. The Barad-dûr set introduced a very specialized version of Frodo, and this is one that has a unique helmet mold. It's an interesting one because it is meant to depict their orc disguises as they traverse through the land of Mordor, and it's really interesting to see them make a specialized molded element specifically for this piece. Obviously, this was part of a helmet multi-pack, which allowed them to make so many different orc helmets for essentially the price of one mold exclusive to the Barad-dûr set, but it's really cool how they actually made this specifically match his disguise in the movie. Of course, it also does have a hairpiece included if you want to display him like that, but I feel like this one is a lot more interesting and unique that way. And the headpiece is the same as the 2023 one we just looked at. Next up, we have his ever-loyal companion, Sam here, and this is a great minifigure. It's actually the only version of Sam that we got back in 2012 with a dark gray cloak. Interestingly enough, they actually did not decide on what the coloration of his hair should be. They went with this lighter shade for the 2012 sets, and then actually for the 2023 relaunch, they recolor the hair to dark orange, which I think better matches the minifigure in the actor designs, but honestly, I still feel so used to this design being the coloration I'm used to. It's the one that I grew up with, so it is still a little bit odd to see him with the different color of hair. This is a very nicely produced minifigure, and again, even though he really only appeared once, which I think was a total crime given the importance of the character, they put a lot of effort into crafting the minifigure detailing to match up with what we see in the movie, including the rucksack that he has holding their lembas spread, and again, a very, very unique expression on the back, which I think is almost a little bit too stylized compared to what we're used to today for LEGO minifigures minifigure graphic design showcasing the scared expression on the back. LEGO would tone that down today if they were to make that exact expression again, but for its time, I think it works, and again, I actually really like the expression that they use here for the front of the face. I feel like it does capture the likeness of the actor very well, so definitely a fan of how they pulled this one off. Chronologically, the very first time we see Sam is in this outfit, which was exclusive to the 2025 Shire set. It features more casual clothes for Sam, and unlike the 2012 version of the character, he has a darker tone of hair, the dark orange color to be specific. I did include some vegetables for him to do his signature gardening in this outfit, and it's a really cool one to get because obviously it only represents his outfit as seen in the very early scenes of Lord of the Rings. He does have a very different outfit throughout the rest of the movie, and that carries over to all of his other appearances, but they intended to make this one very scene specific, to have him be a little bit more dressed up for Bilbo's birthday, so they wanted to give us a special outfit like this, and he does have an alternate expression like so, a more serious one on the other side, and then a standard smile with kind of a cocked eyebrow on one side here, which I think fits Sam alright as a character. I don't really know if that fits the actor's likeness that well, and I almost prefer the older design that we got before. I actually feel like the hair is a little bit too bright here. I wish they went with the original color, but I have to say the outfit is really nicely produced and the dual molded legs look really good. Our upgraded version of the minifigure we just saw appeared in the 2023 Rivendell relaunch of Lord of the Rings, and this one does have a really nice sand blue cape. This is when they changed his hair color to dark orange, and again, as I mentioned in the first minifigure, I actually prefer the older one. Maybe I'm just really used to seeing Sam with that older hairstyle because that was, again, the one I grew up with. It was the one in the video games, so I really associate that hair coloration with him, but I don't know, I feel like the more muted color scheme worked a bit better for the character's hairpiece. Now that being said, I do like a lot of the details here. He does have that same serious expression on the back. Rotating the cape, you can see the print on the back of the torso as well is just a lot cleaner than what we saw previously on the older minifigure. They've definitely cleaned up a lot of the print lines here. So altogether, it's really nicely produced. Just that hairpiece is throwing me off. And finally, here's our version of Sam from Barad-dûr. This one does come with the exclusive molded helmet showcasing his orc disguise, and it is again a very specialized and really cool mold that probably will remain exclusive to that set. He does have the same torso and printing on the front to the back as the other minifigure. No cape this time because he was in Mordor and presumably it was very hot there, so he did not have to wear his cloak, but it is really cool to get that helmet. And I guess officially the minifigure doesn't have the helmet as part of the official figure. He just has the hair, but obviously I wanted to display this one with the helmet because it is such a unique design, and he's got a sword as well. In chronological order of the movie appearances, this is our very first Peregrine Cook, aka Pippin minifigure. This is from the 2025 Shire set, featuring the more formal clothing that he wore during Bilbo Baggins' birthday, and this does come with a pretty fun surprise as well. I really love the printing on the minifigure, showcasing the metallic green, or the metallic gold against the dark green. I think that looks really nice. The facial expression is pretty good for the character. I think that they could have done maybe a bit of a better job replicating his facial features, but I think it looks good enough to showcase him laughing during that scene, and of course he does have the dual molded legs. However, this minifigure also included an alternate face with the Ninjago movie Kai hairpiece recolored in dark gray to showcase the fireworks exploding in his face and what his face looked like after that. I think that's a really funny addition, and I'm really glad they managed to make a very specific alternate version of the minifigure just to depict that scene of the fireworks blowing up in their faces. It's a nice touch and one that probably will never appear outside of any other sets like this, but it's a cool one to get to make the Lord of the Rings minifigures feel very distinct and obviously very close to replicating specific scenes there. Our next Pippin minifigure, though, is a lot more standard compared to what we're used to seeing. This flashes all the way back to 2012, showcasing the character design that they put out in 2012, and I think it really goes to show that LEGO absolutely nailed the designs of the Hobbits when they did it for the first time for that initial Lord of the Rings line. This one is exclusive to the Mines of Moria set, and he does come with an olive green cape, which is a slightly rarer color of the short cape, and in contrast to the minifigure we just saw, I feel like this does an even better better job at portraying the actor's likeness. And a lot of that is because LEGO has that, again, very specialized graphic design for Lord of the Rings back in 2012, where they really were trying their best to replicate the actors' faces and very extreme expressions, and some of it can end up looking a bit uncanny and not like a regular LEGO minifigure, but this just looks pretty perfect to me. I love how he looks very worried, like he's scared or he's messed up. Maybe Gandalf is calling him a fool of a took during this scene, which is why he's kind of got that wobble in his smile, and it's not the kind of detail LEGO would put into a minifigure nowadays because they want to make them a lot more generic in their designs, but I like how much effort they put into depicting a character like this to have some very distinct facial expressions. Even the scared expression there feels so much more animated and alive compared to standard LEGO minifigure designs, and again, it's not something they would do today, but it's cool how back in the day they really wanted to go that extra mile to have the extra level of effort put into the character designs. For me, I feel like there is a balance to be struck. I think that something like the scared expression you see here is maybe a little bit too extreme for minifigure design. It feels almost too stylized for what I would expect to see from a standard LEGO minifigure. But then again, the face on the other side, which is also stylized, feels like it fits the actor's likeness so much better. So it's hard to complain about that. And I definitely do feel like there is a really nice sweet spot in the middle that LEGO could probably find as they continue to craft their minifigures, where the modern ones feel a little bit too generic, but for now, this is a great minifigure to get and one that replicated the design of the character very, very nicely. We got our updated version of Pippin here for the relaunch of Lord of the Rings with the Rivendell set in 2023. And I was just complaining about the facial expressions not matching the characters in modern minifigures, but this one is actually really well done. I feel like this does a very good job at replicating the expression of the character. It looks really good and very much like how he actually appears in the movie. This one, of course, does have those dual molded legs, which are quite nice, an updated design of the print, which I think is cleaner and better than the original one. The scarf detailing is actually a little bit simplified, but it feels like it fits the LEGO style a lot better than the scarf that the other figure had, which almost had a little bit too much detail. And then he has a happy expression on the other side, which I think that kind of double chin on the bottom really does kind of help emphasize the design of the character, and that's what the back printing looks like right there. We got our latest version of the Fool of a Took minifigure in the 2026 Minas Tirith set, and this one is really interesting because it reuses the torso that the Gondor Knights use, so this is the same torso underneath these minifigures here, but this one actually does come with the legs as well as the cape and the headpiece for Pippin, so it is a special minifigure showcasing the outfit that he wore during those scenes. I do have one minor quibble with this one, and that's that they did not recolor the dual molded legs, so we still has the dark blue pants going onto the feet there. If you look at the minifigure or the character in those movie scenes, he's actually wearing black pants, so I feel like the dark blue just isn't quite right for the character. I do like, however, that they did introduce a brand new face print for him. This one is determined and angry, and the other side is his standard smile, but with the open mouth, and I think that that is super cool how they actually gave him a specialized new face print to depict him being slightly angrier at this point in the movie, or more determined, so that is really cool that they went that extra level of detail, especially for a modern LEGO minifigure where I feel like they are so budget constrained and conscious nowadays that it's always special to get a new minifigure head print. But moving on from Pippin, it's time to look at Merry, and this is Merry's chronological first outfit we see, so this one came out in 2025 for the Shire set. Obviously, I'm showcasing him with the fireworks exploding in his face, where he also did get a variant for that, but he does have an alternate expression, so if you want to see what the print looks like on the back, this is what he looks like here. And again, for Merry, they actually switched Merry and Sam's hair color for the modern relaunch of Lord of the Rings. This one is using the darker tan coloration of hairpiece there versus the other one that used the dark orange. And again, I don't really know if I love that. Maybe it's just nostalgia that's blinding me to the hair color that I'm used to, and I'm sure that LEGO designers thought about it a lot and decided that this just looks a lot better. But for me personally, I definitely preferred the other color of hair that he used to have. I feel like it just was very distinct for the minifigures, and now it's kind of confusing to set them all apart, especially in a lineup, because they've gone ahead and swapped the hair colors. Altogether though, I do think the facial expressions of the minifigure are really nice. The outfit is cool as well, how they wanted to depict a very specific outfit, but let's see what else they look like for the other versions of the character. This right here is our original Merry minifigure from the Lord of the Rings lineup in 2012. You can see him using the dark orange color of hair there, and he does have the dark olive color of cape, or the olive green, which is quite nice to see, a standard short sword, and then the dark green outfit. Again, I still feel like they kind of nailed the Hobbit designs when they launched Lord of the Rings back in 2012. They kind of hit perfection right there, and it was very hard to find ways to improve that, even for the newer minifigures. Dual molding was, of course, one way they did that. But you can see that removing the cape to the side, what the alternate print on the back looks like, as well as the alternate very angry expression that he's got, which again, I think this feels almost a little bit too extreme. I can kind of see what they're going for, and I do think it matches the actor very well, but that's an example of the older minifigure designs just going a little bit too far, in my opinion, for the very exaggerated angry yells. Altogether, though, the standard version of the minifigure does look very nice, and let's take a look at the updated version right now. Here is our updated version of Merry from the 2023 Rivendell set. Again, as you can see, they have changed the coloration of his hair and given him dual molded legs, which definitely is a pretty major upgrade. Otherwise, this minifigure is similar to the original one, but one thing you will notice is that, at least from what I can tell, the yellow printing on the shirt is done a little bit more crisp and clean compared to the original. It also has metallic gold printing factored in, which is very nice to see, a brand new facial expression, and on the other side, he has a smile or a laugh instead of that angry expression that he has on the other minifigure. That's what the printing on the back of the torso looks like. Nothing super crazy going on, but again, a nice minifigure to get, and one that replicates the design of the characters in the movies quite well. But now it's time to turn our eye over to the Hobbit trilogy, and we're going to take a look at Bilbo Baggins here, our final most important named Hobbit. And Bilbo gets a ton of different outfits. There are 7 different versions of Bilbo across the years, which is crazy to see. I believe that matches Frodo's, but his is even more special because every single one of his outfits are different, whereas Frodo just has many variations of the same outfit. So this is the first version of Bilbo we see from the unexpected gathering at his house. It is his casual home attire with kind of, you can see the standard overalls there. He has the ring, and then that's what the expression looks like on the back. Slightly worried, perhaps, that so many dwarves are showing up at his house, and altogether I think it is a really nice depiction of the character that just looks like it matches the movie very nicely. We got a really specialized version of Bilbo for a video game exclusive, and this was the Good Morning Bilbo Baggins minifigure with printed arms, the only other minifigure from Lord of the Rings to have printed arms other than King Aragorn in 2026. This one was really special because it was his pajamas he wore when he woke up after the dwarves had left his house, and he was kind of wondering what was going on, or if he was going to go on this adventure or not, and they depicted this minifigure really nicely. I'm honestly so impressed by the level of detail and attention they put into making this minifigure. He was produced in a slightly different factory as opposed to your standard LEGO minifigures. Actually, it was the same factory that made collectible minifigs around that time. So the printing on the face is a little bit off compared to the standard Bilbo minifigure. The eyes are just a little bit too large, and it almost could be mistaken for a knockoff minifigure unless you're very familiar with the different types of plastic and printing that LEGO did in different factories back then. But I have to say, it's really well done. The printing of the arms is so nice. I love how they went the extra layer of detail to print on the arms. It's just so cool to see that. So altogether, definitely a big fan of this minifigure. I think it is probably my favorite iteration of Bilbo yet, just because of that crazy level of detail they did for the sleeves on the arms there on a minifigure that appears for maybe a couple of seconds, not even maybe a full minute in the movie. Of course, then we get to his main attire as seen throughout the Hobbit movies, at least for the first movie there, and that is this dark red jacket. This one was the most common one to appear throughout the Hobbit sets, and you can see he has been equipped with Sting, who he finds in the Troll Horde partway through the first movie. This one does have these standard dark tan legs because they had not figured out dual molding yet at this time, but otherwise is pretty much the same as all of your other Lord of the Rings Hobbit minifigures here. And you can see he does have a very scared expression on the back. Again, I feel like that's almost a little too exaggerated for me. Like, this feels almost way too extreme, even for the character. He did get frightened quite a lot in the first movie especially, but it just feels like they pushed the graphic design a little too far for these minifigures. So, not the biggest fan of that one, but I do like how they were still kind of experimenting with giving minifigures different styles back then. Here's the outfit that he wore throughout the Battle of the Five Armies movie, and it's a much more muted color scheme, the dark blue outfit, wearing a coat for the snow around the mountain, and I think it fits really nicely for the character. The graphic design of the minifigure is really nice here, and it really goes to show how LEGO was continuing to improve their minifigure designs as we moved into 2014 and 15. On the back there, he still does have that very frightened expression though, so not the biggest fan of that. I'm not super crazy about that expression, but I do like how he does have a more standard expression on the front here for the minifigure, which you can see in all its detail right here. Finally, there is another very strange exclusive version of the character, and this is the version of Bilbo that actually appeared as a Blu-ray DVD exclusive. It is so strange how they gave these so much effort in Blu-ray exclusives, but it is cool to get another outfit for him. This one is a bright blue coat, and unfortunately, because this is produced in a different factory, it is slightly lower quality than the rest of the minifigures. The hairpiece barely stays on. It kind of just sits on his head there, and it just falls off super easily. He does have the same facial expressions in theory as the other minifigures, but since this is made in the other factory, the eyes are just a little bit larger, which I think even exaggerates the scared expression even more than it already should. It's not my favorite variant, and really weird that they chose this as the DVD exclusive figure when they could have made, I don't know, any other character that probably would have been more interesting than another outfit for Bilbo here, but it is still cool to get pretty much full coverage of all the outfits he possibly wears in the movies. But of course, the Bilbo minifigs don't stop there. He did go there and back again after all, and now we go back to the Lord of the Rings movie trilogy to take a look at this version of Bilbo who appears during his birthday party. This is the outfit that he wore when he disappeared on his 111th birthday, and as such, he has his dual molded legs. This is introduced for the newer style of hobbits. Really nice graphic design for the back, and it's really cool because they gave him his book, Shined by Bilbo Baggins, on the bottom there, and it literally says there and back again as a sticker inside the book, which is super nice. I think that's one of the coolest accessories to get. Would have been really cool if it was printed, but the stickers work just as fine, and they actually did make a new facial expression for him, showcasing his smirk on this side, which is maybe when he puts the ring on and disappears in front of everybody, and he's quite pleased with himself as he does that. We did get one final old Bilbo minifigure here, and I'm obscuring his face because he's about to jump scare you with a terrifying grimace, and that is when he was in Rivendell and made one last ploy to grab the ring from Frodo, and that was really showing the effects of the ring on him for many years. Of course, for accessories, I did include the Mithril outfit that he gives to Frodo that is in sticker form there, but it's a nice accessory for the character. He does have those dual molded legs, an exclusive torso, and then of course, he does have a much more calm expression on the other side, which matches the character quite well. And then they actually managed to color the hair in white there because in the time that he had spent without the ring, he already started aging very rapidly. So it is cool to be able to see them try to depict that utilizing two different shades of hair for the LEGO minifigure here. While not technically the same type of hobbit as Frodo and his companions, Smeagol here is a very important halfling, so I've included him in this lineup. This is his pre-transformation look, exclusive to the gift with purchase set that came with the Shire, which is a really interesting gift with purchase scene. It's like one of the darkest scenes from Lord of the Rings depicted as a LEGO set, featuring him and Deagle as, of course, they fight over the ring. Now, he does have a fishing rod as the accessory, and while this is before the corruption of the ring, I mean, if you look at that expression, he's already looking pretty corrupted. On the other side, he has a much more friendly face, and that was before he encountered the ring, and maybe was just a little bit nicer and less crazy before he kind of turns into Gollum as the movies progress. Now, it's interesting because they actually made an exclusive torso print for him, so that means that this minifigure is pretty much all around fully exclusive, torso and head, which is really nice to see. Of course, over the years, Smeagol would eventually turn into the creature known as Gollum, and Gollum here is depicted in his very first form that we saw in 2012. It's really interesting because this came out at the same time as the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles theme, which introduced a longer style of arm that's different from your standard skeleton arm. It's a very specialized piece and one that wouldn't last that long in the LEGO portfolio, but it is cool to see that they gave these a little bit more extra effort, and one of the main benefits of this is that Smeagol could actually hold and put on the ring, sitting on top of his hand because the hands were shaped like regular LEGO minifigure hands, something the newer version actually cannot do because it uses the standard skeleton arm. It was a very specialized mold to get for Gollum here, and it's actually really cool because they came up with a couple of different expressions for him to reflect the different personalities he has throughout the movies. So this one with the wider eyes is maybe more of the regular Smeagol persona, at least he's trying to be a little more friendly here. And then this version is definitely the Gollum persona. He looks way more sinister. He's got the eyes in a grimace. He's squinting. His mouth isn't as wide open. And I love how they gave him two different expressions to play around with. Of course, the figure is posable, so you can kind of move the arms up and down, and that is really nice. I also like how long the arms are because I feel like it matches his proportions really well in the movies. And that's something that the newer minifigure is unfortunate because I feel like in their quest to make it feel more like it fits within the LEGO system, you do lose out a little bit on how specialized this was because those longer arms definitely match Gollum's proportions really well. It would have been interesting to see a version of Gollum that maybe was standing up a little bit more if they were to try to remake the minifigure, but the remade one, while it is a new mold, they decided to pretty much just make it a very similar style as this figure. Here is the remade version of Gollum from the Barad-dûr set, and you'll notice a few key differences. First of all, to keep him in line with the rest of LEGO minifigure designs, they have removed his nose and not printed the pupils on the eyes there, instead just going for the white sclera in the eyes. They've also moved the different leg forward this time, so before it was his right leg that was forward, now it's the left leg, and they've actually made the loincloth a little bit more of a wider and larger element, although unfortunately, I feel like the printing on the loincloth has actually gotten a little bit worse. LEGO seemed to be a little bit better at printing on 3D surfaces back in the day as they do now, where if you look at the older minifigure, the printing very clearly continues from the back all the way to the legs there, whereas this one obviously cuts off a little bit too early to where it should be, which I think is a bit of a downgrade, especially when you compare the two different figures of the same character. If you were to ask me, I honestly much prefer the older version of Gollum. I feel like you lose a lot of the character detail here without the nose, with the shorter arms for skeletons. It almost kind of feels like a downgrade, and while I know why LEGO made the changes they did, obviously this feels like it fits within the LEGO style a lot more. I think the very specialized one that we got before was definitely a lot better than the one that we got now. Of course, with Smeagol comes Deagle, and Deagle here was also exclusive to the Gift with Purchase set. Unfortunately, they did not have enough budget to give him an exclusive torso, so while he does have a specialized outfit in the movie, they're just reusing the Samwise torso here, which I guess kind of works for the character. At least it's different than any of the other Hobbits that appeared in that set, because Sam had a different torso for that particular set, and it puts this piece still in production if they want to include Sam in some other sets, but it is a bit unfortunate because it just very clearly looks like he is using a piece that was made for Sam. I do like, however, that they did make a brand new facial expression for him that is exclusive to the character. And right here, you can see him smiling on one side, but I actually prefer him being the underwater version right there, where he's swimming underwater, he's catching a fish, and then he's trying to hold his breath right there, which is super scene specific, but it works very well. Our third to last Hobbit minifigure is not one of the major characters, but still a very important character in the overall lore of the movies, and that is Rosie Cotton, who eventually goes on to marry Sam, who apparently will be appearing in the Hunt for Gollum movie, or like maybe the other Lord of the Rings movie that Stephen Colbert is writing. Who really knows what's going on with the franchise right now? But this is actually a really well-produced minifigure. It is based off of her appearance in the Shire set, so she actually has her 2025 level of detailing. They have a dark blue skirt, dual molded legs, even though you can barely even see them underneath the skirt, and she does have a different style of hairpiece than almost all of the other Hobbits that we've looked at in this entire video. Now, on the back there, you can see she does have two different facial expressions. I believe that this is exclusive to the character. I don't remember. Maybe this is some Harry Potter minifigure head print or something, but even then, it still just works really well. I mean, I certainly think that it looks like it could have been made for the character, and even though the back of it is a very generic face print, I really like the smile on this side. That certainly feels very unique. Altogether, it's a really nice outfit and one that feels very different and distinct compared to all the other Hobbits we looked at on this list, so definitely a really good one to add to the collection. Next up, we have Farmer Odo Proudfoot, one of those background Hobbit characters here. He's very proud of his large feet, as the name suggests here. Now, this is a really nicely done minifigure. Again, not the most crazy in terms of detail, but it is still very well produced, and they did have this specialized head print for him, showcasing a smile, and then a little bit more of a serious expression on the other side right here. So altogether, pretty nicely done. The gray eyebrows and the dark tan hair do throw me off a little bit. It just feels like the coloration there doesn't quite match up, but everything else about the figure is really nice, and he does have the exclusive torso print as well. Now, Mrs. Proudfoot here is our final Hobbit minifigure, and this is arguably one of the most interesting because for her they introduced a brand new molded skirt element that we still have not seen on basically any other minifigure characters to date. This one is showcasing the kind of more traditional style of skirt that you would see around the Hobbiton area. Of course, she does have dual molded legs underneath, which again you cannot see under the skirt, but it is nice to see that. And then she also has a very angry expression right here as well, which I think fits the character quite well. So altogether, very nicely produced minifigure, exclusive torso print there too, and really cool to get a specialized molded piece for such a random one-off character. Alright, and with that, we have summed up our look at every single one of the Hobbit minifigures that we've gotten for Lord of the Rings. There have been a ton of characters here, and a lot of them are variations of the same characters. So a lot of Frodo's, a lot of Sam's, a lot of Bilbo's especially. I think Bilbo takes the cake for the most amount of variations, which is really interesting because obviously Frodo is probably more important than Bilbo, but we get so many different versions of Bilbo throughout the years for the Hobbit movies as well as the old versions, and then Frodo as well gets a ton of different ones himself, plus a lot of Sams, and it's also cool to see some other Hobbit characters that they finally produced. When they made the Shire set, they gave us some of the Hobbit characters that are not just the main characters we see in the movies, which really adds a lot of diversity to the world and allows you to make your own Shire scenes, which is a really nice touch. So altogether, great lineup of figures, and I can't wait because this is just the beginning. Tune in next time where we're going to go back to New Zealand and check out the men and wizards of Middle-earth.